Welcome back to the Why Not Us podcast. My name is Carter Kramer.
Mike McGowan. Ooh, we're cruising.
Mike McGowan. We are cruising today. Fairly efficient
Yeah.
for a couple of, I won't say.
Degenerates.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things we can say. All right, man. We are to our final. This is our last recording of the day, which nobody that's going to listen to this is going to care.
Yeah, no one cares.
Yeah, nobody cares because it's just going to come out on some Friday. I'm not sure if we really care.
No.
It's been a good, solid day.
Yeah, it has.
We've gotten a lot of stuff done. I like the topics. This trip, it's been a good stretch of topics.
I tell you, I like the fact that we've gotten back to you and I, and we'll get to some guests next time.
Yes,
right?
we do. We're excited to get some guests back on.
But I've liked this.
It's
how we started, man.
It is how we started. And I'll tell you this, dude, I think the topics, when we can kind of rip through these pretty quickly, it's just tougher when you get somebody else in because every guest is different. Not saying that, I mean, we've had great guests.
Yeah.
I mean, phenomenal guests. So, but it's like you and I feel like we've gotten to the point finally where we can just kind of roll through this and it's a lot easier. But anyway.
And I'm sure our viewers appreciate a little bit more because they're shorter.
Yeah.
You know, they're not.
Yeah, for somebody like me, I have a short attention span. Yeah. All right, man. So what we're going to tackle here for this particular discussion is about electric vehicles. What's your thought on electric vehicles? You got an opinion?
Yeah. I mean, actually, I don't. I'm indifferent.
Yeah. All right.
I think it's cool technology.
Right.
But what I don't like is the fact that it's being forced upon the masses, the populace.
Sure. I think there's a ton of this discussion, dude, that's really interesting. Obviously, I'm a car guy. So, there's kind of what I'll call the old school portion of this, which is I like big, loud, American stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just because it's fun. Not that I should, I don't drive something like that every day, but I think that we should be able to have it. You know what I mean? It's kind of one of those deals. And the thing that this is really is interesting to me about this EV discussion, Mike, has to do more with the infrastructure. It has to do, as somebody who built critical infrastructure for a good portion of my life, I think that there's a very large lack of understanding about how we're not prepared, man, to take on this electric vehicle thing 100%.
Do you remember our episode about energy with Tony?
Tony, yeah, I do.
And he said flat out, especially the West Coast.
Absolutely.
Because remember he said the East Coast, that kind of the East Coast and the Midwest, kind of there's three major grids, right?
Yep.
And those two that are eastern half of the United States, he said they were more sophisticated, they were better insulated, they were better built.
Yes.
Right? And they're stronger.
Yep.
And so
there's more redundancy.
Correct.
That sort of thing, right? Yeah.
Whereas the Western grid, the massive grid, which is, I don't know if it's Mississippi River and West, but it's close to that, right?
Yeah, I don't know. But it's
massive.
He
goes, it's outdated.
Yeah.
The infrastructure is not there.
Yeah.
And so when you have a state like California that wants to go to all electric buses by 2025, next year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, good luck.
And then supposedly all electric cars in 2035, whatever it is, right?
Right.
Like the power grid can't take it.
It can't.
Especially a place like California with rolling blackouts and everything else.
Absolutely. And Mike, this is the part that bugs me. Where does the majority of the power come from for our electric grid? Coal. Yeah. We're burning coal.
Yeah.
Okay. I love this electric vehicle idea if we had more green energy to support the grid. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, why does it make sense? Again, we're burning coal to create this energy over here, or we're burning petroleum products to make it over there. I guess I don't really see that is it really that much greener? I think that we're just not quite there, right? I think if we had a lot of this green energy in place, if we had more wind, more solar, more of those things that were supporting chargers, we had more charging stations in the United States. We don't have that. So the reason this came up as a topic for us is because almost all of the large automobile manufacturers that build some sort of electric vehicle
hit the brakes.
They all hit the brakes, like at the same time. Like it was something was very obvious, right, to them. And it had to do with the cost of building the vehicles going up, the demand for the vehicles going down.
Correct.
At the same time. Interest rates are going up.
Yep.
They were talking about the difficulty to sell electric vehicles at 7+% interest rate because they're expensive.
And they're not cheap cars.
No, they're expensive, right? And the funny thing is, a lot of I think, what did I just read something about? Rivian loses like $30,000 per
$33,000 per vehicle.
Yeah, it's a subsidized market, right?
Correct.
So it doesn't make sense. We're not there, right? We're not there.
Well, and when you say some companies have hit the brakes,
Yeah.
some companies have canceled
Oh, yeah.
programs.
Oh, yeah.
So
Several. Yeah.
General Motors and Honda have canceled a program to sell EVs for around $30,000, and Ford postponed $12 billion in EV investment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they paused their $3.5 billion EV plant in Marshall, Michigan.
So why is the demand low?
It's a good question, right?
Yeah, I think a lot has to do with the infrastructure.
Correct. And
I mean, if you live in certain parts of the country, there isn't charging stations.
right. And I just
You
saw
don't have a choice.
And who typically are electric vehicles for?
Hippies.
Okay, so what they always cite is Gen Z, Gen
sure.
Z. So I just saw a stat where last year in December, I saw this.
Yeah.
In December of 2022, the Gen Z, how many of you are interested in buying an electric vehicle? And it was about 50%. Now it's a year later, it's 40%.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. So demand's going down.
There's a decline in demand, and again, this has to do with there's more going on here than I think what we see at the surface. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's very apparent to me that people talk to each other. There's reviews that come out on this stuff. There's obviously some unhappy people that have spent this money on electric vehicles, and the word's getting out there that like, hey man, maybe it's not the greatest thing to go and do. I understand this whole reduction of carbon footprint. I do.
Yeah.
But I also, I sit there and ask myself, there's a lack of regulation on a lot of huge manufacturing facilities worldwide. I'm not talking about the United States.
Right.
Dude, look in some of these countries, bro.
Yeah.
These plants are pumping out, more than our, vehicles are not the biggest problem.
Yeah, China's burning coal.
It's insanity, bro,
yeah.
right? It's insanity. So, and then, Mike, to me, the other part of this that I think people are catching on to, which I don't think people understood at the beginning, has to do with what it takes to make these batteries. Yeah. And I don't think people understood, it's just like, dude, we're so ignorant, right? It's like, oh, hey, man, cool lithium batteries. They last forever. They're great. And it's a great technology. No question. Dude, batteries have come light years in the last decade.
So really have. So my golf cart, right?
Yep.
When I moved clubs, you can't have a golf cart at Superstition, right?
Right.
We could at Seville.
Okay.
So my golf cart's was in a storage area. It has been in a storage area for a year and a half.
Okay.
Right? So I put it in there in July of 2022. Right?
Yep.
I went in there this December because I wanted to take the kids out to look at Christmas lights. We do this cool thing where we build a Christmas light scavenger hunt.
Okay.
So you have to find a snowman, and you have to find.
Oh yeah, I like that.
That kind of stuff.
Sounds fun.
And
my daughter would like that. Yeah.
When I put it in July
of
of 2022, right, it had 40% power.
Okay.
When I pulled it out in December, it had 20% power. It sat for 18 months.
Wow.
And lost half of the charge that was in it.
Yeah.
But only 20% of it.
I was going to say, man, the old school batteries, that thing would have been dead. And
completely
60 days.
Completely
and
dead.
You would have, pretty incredible. Right? It's come a long way.
And by the way, to charge that cart,
excuse me,
I plug it into the car. There's a nozzle, right? You plug it in.
Yeah. Then you say a nozzle?
Yeah, like a nozzle that goes in.
A nozzle?
I don't know. It's a connector, whatever. So anyway,
the plug.
Yeah. What? The plug was in the wall, dummy. That's my point in this whole thing.
Okay, go.
Is that it's just you just plug it into the wall.
Plug it in, yeah.
Yeah.
It's got a little trickle charger on it.
Yeah. It's great.
As it should be, yeah, just to maintain. And look, man, let's keep going down this path because I think there's more steps to this than people understand.
Yep.
You decide, Mike, you're like, hey, I'm going to transition from my, your Infinity to an electric vehicle.
Okay.
A few steps you got to take, right? You got a charging station at your house?
No.
You got to install one.
Yeah. So
what's that take?
You got to rewire some shit.
And dude, these aren't like little. These aren't little draws, right? This is like a 220. You're talking separate breaker, your breaker box, dedicated circuit. You know what I mean? All that fun stuff.
Yep.
Which again, it's doable, but there's cost involved.
Yeah,
time, energy, effort to get that done.
Yeah.
Then you have to make sure that you choose, I think, the right vehicle because obviously there's different lengths and distances that these things will drive on different charges, different battery setups, blah, 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 blah. I can tell you that from the people I know that have them, they're like, dude, if you drive the speed limit, when it shows you like the time or the it'd be like your fuel gauge in a gas powered car.
Mileage left, yeah.
Very accurate. But as soon as you start to climb over the speed limit, it's the distance is reduced greatly.
So
there's been
someone like you or I, we're going like 4 miles and we're done.
Well, the problem is, dude, is that if you have to plan out your routes to be able to find charging stations, and you are going these distances, well, all of a sudden you look down and you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what do you do? Because there isn't charging stations in a lot of places in the country. So, like, you have to, like, look at a map ahead of time. You have to plan your routes. If you're going any sort of distance, I'm not talking about driving to the grocery store. I think they're great.
Here to Vegas.
Right. Perfect example.
Here to Vegas.
Yes, you got to know.
And I know that route like the back of my hand because Jared and I go every other month.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Crazy bastards.
I know. I don't know where there's a charging station on that route.
That's what I mean. You have to get on. I mean, you literally have to get online. You have to look up the charging stations. You have to know. It's just
because there's no charging station in Wickiup.
No.
Right.
That's right. And too, man. Like, there's a lot of big hills in that drive.
Yeah.
There's a lot of up and down.
Yep.
That all makes a difference too, right?
Yep.
Just like it does in your fuel mileage. I mean, you're getting less power, dude, going uphill. I mean, it's just part of the deal. So then, on top of that, there's been a lot of recent articles that have come out. There was just one in Iowa about the Iowa City buses that we just had -6 degree high temperatures. The buses are running at a 60% reduction in power.
Right.
They can't use them.
And it takes them 3 times as long to charge.
Yes.
Because of the cold.
Yes.
Well, they had the thing in Chicago recently where all the Teslas froze.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't get in it. And when you called support, apparently they're like, well, show us what it's telling you on the screen. I can't get into the car because it's frozen. So how am I going to tell you what's on the screen?
Right. Dude, there was talking about the bus thing, and you and I talked about this a little bit and kind of laughed about it. Somebody said, well, do the math. It's 8% of the days that you're going to have that cold in Iowa. You can't make a decision on, how you spend government money on 8% of the time. It's like, dude, if you can't go to work
8% of the time.
Yeah. Or you can't go to school.
Yeah.
I mean, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Like, it does matter.
Yeah.
8% of the time does matter.
Oh, yeah, it does.
I mean, right?
Hello. Yeah.
When you're talking about a bus route.
Yep.
I mean, if you're hanging out for your bus route going to work and you don't know that the bus won't go because it's electric and it's too cold out, you're standing out there, by the way, in -6 degree temperatures waiting for the bus that you don't know isn't going to show up.
Yep.
It's a weird situation,
so,
right?
So 8%, right?
Not to get into that, yeah.
And I remember you telling me about this conversation you had with the guy.
Yeah.
And like, do you know what 8%? So let's just say you work every day. Right?
Yeah.
You work a regular job, 40 hours a week. You get 2 weeks off a year.
Okay.
Right. That's 50 weeks. Right.
Yeah.
What's 8% of 50 weeks? It's 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So you're going to miss 4 weeks worth of work. You're going to miss
2 weeks of unpaid time.
A month worth of work.
Yeah, well, and the way that we're living today and the cost of living, it's a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck. So it matters. So anyway, Mike, I think, as we look at this whole situation, I think this is another interesting example of the government kind of getting ahead of themselves with some of these kind of forced policies. And hey, there was all these things, right? The EPA saying, hey, you've got to have this many vehicles that you manufacture that get this much gas mileage or better by this date. Yep. Hey, by this time you have to at least produce this many EV vehicles. Hey, by 2030 we're going to transition everything over. Like, we're not there, dude.
Yeah, no.
And I don't understand why. I do understand, and this infuriates me. It's about money, right? It's all these people invested in this technology. These people invested in lithium. These people invested in all these, to cobalt and all these other things it takes to build these batteries and all this. Like, it's a whole racket in itself. And then they're like, hey, by the way, we're going to force you to transition to that.
Yeah.
After we've already invested in those things.
Do you know what it takes to make an EV battery?
I know it's absolutely ridiculous.
You ready?
I'm ready. Let's hear it.
You must process 25,000 pounds of brine for the lithium, 30,000 pounds of ore for the cobalt, 5,000 pounds of ore for the nickel, and 25,000 pounds of ore for the copper. Digging up 500,000 pounds of the Earth's crust for just one battery.
Car,
one battery.
Holy cow, dude! And we talked to a guy that he worked at Tesla. Remember this discussion?
Yeah.
And he was talking about the battery strings and how complex they are and this and that. And I think I said something to him like, hey man, so what happens if you have a problem? He's like, well, that's what I did. He's like, dude, trying to trouble. He said there was like 7,000 cells in that battery setup in a Tesla.
Yeah.
All like some of them are, put together in parallel. Some are like it's a very complex. I was like, holy buckets. I had no idea because I don't know much about the actual battery setup or anything. I do think it's pretty amazing, and this is the difficulty. I don't think that the hang up has to do with battery technology anymore. The battery technology is really good.
Yeah,
it's come a long way,
Agreed.
man. Like there's no way you could have done this 20 years ago with the batteries that we had available.
Yep.
So I mean, they have figured out how to build these batteries that have much more longevity, more power. You know what I mean? There's a lot of improvement there, but you got to be able to charge the thing. And if we're charging the thing using coal, or we're charging the thing like, it's so inefficient, bro. How is it more inefficient than a car that gets 55 miles per gallon?
Yeah.
And we have all the infrastructure there that's been there for 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah, as long as gas prices are low enough.
And that's a whole nother discussion, right? It's like, we've talked about the power, talked about Tony about the power grid, and we talked about, nuclear power plants. We talked about, how we all of a sudden make these drastic decisions to make these huge changes, overnight, right? Our government policies change and they're drastic. I mean, huge, hey, everything's going to this. Boom. Hey, we're going to get rid of all the nuclear power plants. Yeah. Boom. Like I don't understand how people just look past the opportunity to try to run some of these things in tandem.
Yeah.
Why can't we just have some wind and some solar and some nuclear power, and maybe we still have to burn some coal, and but again, it's like, it's all or nothing, right?
Yeah, but so I mean, you're talking about the government's, they're enforcing their will, right? Or you're talking about the government's, going too far. They're going too far to one side, saying we have to be all EV, right?
Yeah.
But by such and such a date, by such and such a year.
Yep.
But I think that misses the point, because it's really demand. At the end of the day, it's demand. If you're going to build a product, right, there has to be demand.
That's right.
Right. And if there's
the market will determine.
Correct.
It will.
And the government doesn't. And it's the government trying to dictate, economics. Yeah. And the government trying to dictate what people want and, how they want it and when they want it.
Yeah.
Right. And it doesn't work.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. And we're along. And again, man, there's a lot that needs to happen. So here's a couple quick tidbits for you. Congress had set aside $7.5 billion in the 2021 infrastructure law to meet Joe Biden's goal to build a national network of 500,000 publicly available chargers by 2030. Okay. This article is from January 11th, 2024. As of this time, so that was 2021.
Yep, 3 years.
3 years, basically, right? So far, how much of that money's been awarded to actually build?
What was the total figure?
$7.5 billion.
Okay,
with a B.
How much has been spent?
How much has been deployed to actually build?
I don't know. $1 billion.
They just rolled out the first $623 million, which is going to build 47 EV charging stations.
47. 47.
Those
for
47,
those
47 EV charging stations, by the way, are in 22 states and Puerto Rico. How many electric vehicles do you think are in Puerto Rico?
I don't know. It's a warm climate. There might be a few.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah,
I feel like I don't see that many. I mean, I see them more and more. I definitely am seeing more and more.
Yeah, but I mean, again, it doesn't make sense in cold weather, right? Because they freeze.
Yeah.
The Iowa City bus thing, right?
Yeah. So there's been some pushback, right? So this money, there was some pushback because basically they went out to a large group of people to try to award this $7.5 billion, right? And some of them were not American companies,
okay,
and not American people. And you and I have talked about this too. It's like, if we are going to roll out these huge infrastructure projects, why in the hell aren't we keeping the money in our own country?
Okay. Wait, ready?
Silly.
Puerto Rico.
Cool. Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah.
There's 2.2 million cars in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
Total.
Yeah, that's more than I would have thought, honestly.
Me too. It's an island, right? Like,
yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
How many of them are EVs? Less than 1%. And we're spending money.
And that's the first priority.
Yeah.
Mike, these are the decisions that this administration is making. Makes no sense.
None.
Okay,
None.
You are.
It's all ideology.
Our automobile manufacturers are saying this isn't working. They're like, we need support. They're punting on initiatives. They're taking government money and basically saying we don't even want it because this isn't going to work. It's not working.
Yeah.
Right. People don't want the cars. The interest rates are too high.
Yep.
Dude, this thing is like this, right?
Yeah.
And like so many things have been over the last, and here we are like, well, let's take some money and build some charging stations in Puerto Rico. because that's going to help.
It makes
That's going to help Ford and GM
sense.
and the American, Tesla. I mean, companies that hire and employ a shit ton of people here, by the way.
Yeah.
How many people lost their jobs over this deal, bro?
Oh, well, that Michigan plant, they stopped the
They shut down a whole plant.
They shut a whole plant off.
Yes. They closed an entire plant.
Well, they didn't even build. They didn't even. There were going to be jobs, but they didn't even
Yes.
build it. So the construction workers who were building it done,
Right.
and the people who were going to work there, UAW, whomever,
Right.
done.
So let me ask you this, Mike. This is the part that gets really confusing to me because, in every single project, and especially in every single infrastructure-related project, I feel like there's a very clear, set of steps you have to take to be able to connect the dots.
Yep.
Right?
Agreed.
Here we are. Our government is forcing car manufacturers to build these electric vehicles before they put in the infrastructure to support them.
Yeah. It's
What?
It's campaign
I
promises.
mean, is this like a guess? Like, well, let's just see if anybody buys one first before. I mean, I don't even understand the logic. It's like if you're and people are standing up there saying, well, this is the way of the future. It's the way of the future, man. We have to go through. We have to reduce this carbon footprint, dude. You know me. I'm all about let's save the planet. Dude. We're screwed already, by the way.
Yeah.
But I just don't understand this line of thinking of, hey, let's mandate these manufacturers to do this. Then, by the way, several years too late, let's go, oh, shit, we should probably spend some of that money we set aside to build infrastructure to support those guys for building those vehicles and the people that want to buy them.
Yep.
It just doesn't make sense, Mike. It just doesn't make sense.
It makes zero sense.
We're already putting stress on the grid. We have places, like you said, brownouts, blackouts. I mean, we talked about that with Tony. And here we are telling people, like, well, dude, just plug in your cars for, draw another. There's, let me see this, too. I was going to show you this.
And how many people can realistically afford an EV? It can't be more than 10% of the population.
Well, here's part of the hard part, man. The hard part is they haven't been around long enough that you don't have 25-year-old electric vehicles on the market.
True.
There's never going to be. Batteries aren't going to last that long.
But can't you replace the battery?
Yeah. I think it's let's see, let's figure out the cost of this. I think I looked at this once.
Okay.
Replacement. Let's just use Tesla as an example because it's the most common electric car.
Of course. Right?
Replacement cost for Tesla batteries. I have no idea. I do think I looked this up once and I was shocked. Okay, so you're talking about people being able to afford the car. If you own a 2016 to 2020 Tesla model, you can buy a used battery for $10,000. If you want to buy a new battery from Tesla, it's $15,000. That's for a Tesla Model X, which is like the SUV. Yeah, that's not some sporty.
Yeah.
Average cost of replacement battery, depending on if you go new or used, is $10,000 to $20,000. It says.
You can buy a car.
That's on Tesla's. That's on Tesla's.
You can buy a
website.
good used car for $15,000.
Right now, you can. Yeah. You can buy a pretty good used car for $10,000.
Yeah, absolutely. Chop around a little.
Then it's not gonna be electric.
Holy cow! It's insane, man.
Isn't it?
Good Lord.
Yeah. It's pretty wild, dude.
So I mean, where does the the thought process come from? Where does the idea come from that we have to get into because of the carbon footprint, because the Earth is dying, because the heat, the Earth is warming, all that kind of good stuff?
I'm pretty sure it was because people invested money in
Correct.
technology.
Correct.
Right.
That's where I was going with that. Yes.
We got to be able to ask these questions, man, and do our own research and kind of figure out like what the heck is going on here.
Yep.
This is interesting because this is an actual post from an individual on a forum, basically warning people about the cost. Okay. They said that cost to replace the battery shared by current auto shows complete battery replacement for a Tesla 3 costs well over $16,000. About $2,200 for the labor, $14,251 for parts in the battery pack itself. That's one, so that gives you an idea. So, and again, these people are talking about replacing batteries in 2020 Teslas. It's 2024, bro.
Yeah.
4 years old.
Really?
Yeah. They do take shit. Batteries go bad, man.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't charge them. I mean, that's the thing that's going to happen, right? It's not the people that take care of them and are trickle charge.
Yeah.
Like you said, this goes back to your golf cart discussion, right? Yeah. It's like, I think you take care of these lithium batteries, man. I think they last a really long time. I think they're they're pretty efficient, pretty effective.
I agree.
The problem's going to be the person that sticks that thing in their garage, doesn't plug it in. It's -6 degrees in Iowa for 2 weeks straight for the high. At night it's getting down to -16.
Yep.
All of a sudden, dude, the battery, if it won't take a charge anymore, you got to go replace it. 10 to 20 grand.
Oh shit.
Isn't that nutty? Yeah. So anyway, man, it's not a foolproof system. I think people need to understand that there's a little more to it.
Yep.
There are some Internal Revenue Service tax credits if you own an electric vehicle or if you've put one in service in a specific tax year. So for 2023, you want to hear what some of those are?
What?
If you place a electric vehicle in service from January 1st to April 17th, $2,500 base amount tax credit.
Yep.
Plus $417 for a vehicle with at least 7 kilowatt hours of battery capacity. $417 for each kilowatt hour of battery capacity beyond 5 kilowatt hours, up to $7,500 total. Okay.
Yeah.
For vehicles that were placed in service after April 18th, and I have no idea what's significant about that date. $3,750 if the vehicle meets the requirements. It's got to meet critical mineral requirements. I'm not sure what that is. There may be some changes in the battery production maybe around that time.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the situation. However, this was the part I thought was interesting. Okay. There are income limits to qualify for these tax credits.
Okay.
Okay. So if you are married, filing jointly,
Mm-hmm.
your household income cannot exceed 300 grand.
Okay.
If you are head of household, 225,
Okay.
and for anyone else, 150,000. So I guess one of the things we talked about, man, is kind of the cost of these electric vehicles, the cost to install a charging station. It's expensive, right?
Yeah.
I don't think a $300,000 household income. And again, we're talking about the majority of EV owners. I think are in more affluent parts of the country.
Yeah,
Do you agree?
So tax breaks
Or maybe affluent's not even the word, but they're expensive places to live.
Right.
Don't you think that's going to exclude quite a few people?
Yeah.
I have to get 300 grand for a joint household income in, say, California.
It's nothing.
I feel like you can't even hardly rent an apartment.
Yeah. Maybe that was purposeful, right? Maybe it was because the government said, we know who's buying these vehicles. We're going to provide a tax credit and proclaim that we're providing tax credits for EVs, but we know that 60% or 50% or 70% of the people who actually own EVs can use the tax credit. The other 30, 40, 50%, whatever it is, cannot.
Yeah. Yep.
It was probably purposeful.
Yeah.
I think
it's an interesting thing. There's some more qualifications, and there's a few different things in here I thought were interesting too. In addition to the vehicle's manufacturer, suggested retail price cannot exceed $80,000 for van, sport utility vehicles, or pickup trucks, or $55,000 for any other vehicles.
Want to say that again? So
the price of the vehicle itself cannot exceed $80,000 for a van, sport utility vehicle, or a pickup truck.
So if you pay more than $80 for a F-150 Lightning, you have no access to the tax credit.
Correct.
Okay, so last year, actually 2 years ago, I got on the list for the F-150 Lightning.
Yeah, did you really?
I did. Now, why? Why do I need a pickup truck? I don't know. I don't have a wrench.
Fun.
Anyway,
fit all kinds of goodies in there.
Yeah. So
go to Home Depot, buy some plants.
So first of all, I got pushed back a year.
Okay.
Because there was a huge waiting list.
Yeah, I know there was. Yeah.
So then when it came around last year, the two there was 4 models.
Yep.
Right. So call it like basic plus something in platinum, right?
Yep, sure.
So only the premier and the platinum. I don't know the terms, right?
Yeah.
But
sure.
those were the only 2 available.
Which would be the higher end.
The 2 higher end.
Yeah.
The 2 lower end were no longer available.
What was the cost of one of those? Just out of curiosity.
The base on the third, not the highest end, was like 74.
Yeah. So you're above. No, this says pickup trucks 80,000. So you'd be right there.
But that's base. If I added anything to it, if I put a toolbox in the back, it was going to hit 80.
Right.
Right.
Interesting stuff, man. I mean, they're trying to incentivize. Again, are
they really trying to incentivize? Or are they just proclaiming it so they have a talking point in their campaign speech?
Question. And look, man, we know that a lot of people hear tax credit and they're like, "Oh, I'll buy one of those."
Yeah.
Not even understanding the qualifications or whether or not they're going to actually, meet the requirements to get the credit. So
it's so bad.
It is, yeah. It's just interesting stuff, man. I think the push for EVs is, I think it's needed in some ways. I think there's definitely a need to improve the technology. You and I have talked about other things. There's been stories of, the hydrogen car, and there's been There's some interesting stuff. If you dig into that, maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more. But you and I
remember that conversation.
I had a good conversation with you about that. It's kind of funny. I remember
that conversation happened around the same island that we birthed this idea of.
It did, yes, it did. Yeah. There's some conspiracy theory discussions supposedly with some other technology that's kind of been suppressed. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a real thing. I think there's other ways and other means of transportation that would be very efficient and effective. And I think that things like big oil and things like these, battery situation and electric cars is kind of really stifled. And, I just hope at some point we will see some better technology. I think at the end of the day, it goes back to everything else. Do your research.
Right.
Do what's right for you. Right. Your circumstances are yours. My daily commute and your daily commute are different.
Yep.
It may be a great option for somebody and maybe a terrible option for somebody. But do your research. Don't look at like, I can get a tax credit and not understand, all of the ins and outs.
Sure.
I think understanding the I would say kind of the lack of stability of our electrical grid in the United States before you buy one of these, at least in your area, is pretty important as well.
Yeah.
I've got a good friend, Chad. He's, his setup. He's a Tesla's guy. He's had a couple of them. He put up a huge when he set up his EV charging, and he's a doctor. He's does pretty well. Mm-hmm. He set up a pretty large solar setup to run his EV charging station. Now, Mike, that to me makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Not burning coal to run this green electric.
Right.
I mean, you're charging with solar.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, again, there's a long, and probably an unrealistic ROI on a situation like that. I think for most, right? I mean, it takes a lot of juice, man, to charge on these things.
And you got the solar disposal later.
Oh, yeah.
Not to mention the cost of setting it up. But yeah. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And so anyway, I don't think we're quite there yet. I hope that we continue to make progress. I hope that we continue to see innovations in things like battery technology, and the infrastructure itself has got to get better.
What about natural gas?
I've actually driven natural gas trucks. There were some people that pushed for that for a while. Natural gas was really inexpensive. You saw a lot of work trucks.
Yeah.
And instead of going diesel,
a lot of city buses do the same thing.
Right. They started going to natural gas. I mean, there's all kinds of options, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I think. I think we get pigeonholed into these because we want to create an investment opportunity, especially for people that have some inside information,
right,
to really push to say this is the direction we're going to go.
Okay.
Think about diesel exhaust fluid. Do you remember that whole thing, or do you know anything about that?
Mm-mm.
So I think it was in 2016 that it was mandated by the federal government that if you were going to manufacture diesel trucks anymore, that if they didn't achieve a certain, I can't remember, there was something to do with the like the testing you have to do, like in California, what's that called?
Emissions.
You do it here, emissions testing, right? If truck exceeded a certain level of emissions, they had to, from the manufacturer, come with what was called a diesel exhaust fluid system. And it's basically urea. And the urea is put into a separate tank and then mixes up with the carbon that's coming out of the diesel exhaust. They did things like exhaust regeneration systems where now, like in a new diesel truck, you're basically regenerating the exhaust and burning it twice.
Okay.
So like
does it add to the capability? Does it provide more quote unquote fuel?
It's awful.
Okay.
For a few reasons. So like, you change your oil in a truck that's got an EGR system. If you turn it on and run it for 5 minutes and shut it off, the oil is black because you're pumping exhaust into your engine oil to try to burn it, right? Trying to burn off the carbon. Yeah. And then this urea system, the DEF systems fail miserably often. When the stuff gets dried out, it crystallizes. And so you can imagine how that has effect on tanks and all sorts of things, right? Going through filters and just all sorts of shit, right? I will say that they smell clean. Like you can you could start a diesel truck in your garage that had a diesel exhaust fluid system, and you wouldn't if it doesn't have it, it's pretty stinky, right? But you're seeing less longevity in the vehicles. You're seeing less capability. You're having engine issues and other things. Dude, imagine.
So it hurts more than it helps.
In my opinion, I think it's very counterproductive. And this is what I think is interesting, Mike. What's interesting to me is that was a federally mandated situation.
So the government went to the car makers and said, you have to do this if you're going to sell
by this date.
Diesel vehicles.
All these trucks have to have this by this date.
Okay.
You think any of those guys invested in DEF systems and manufacturers and the plants that make it?
Pelosi did.
Absolutely, she did.
Yeah, she had to re-up the cans.
Oh, God, she should re-up her face. Anyway, had to go there.
So,
yeah, but you know, it's the same kind of thing,
yeah.
right? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of that was a really long way to get around to this point of, you know, these people, I think in cases a lot of times are mandating these situations more to pad their own pockets than they are to do what's best for the people that are buying the vehicles.
Agreed.
And I think that goes along with the EV situation. I think that I wish they would focus more on the consumer and how do we make it a better experience for the consumer. And by the way, let's help these people that we're trying to force to manufacture these vehicles to get rid of some of this carbon footprint. Let's help them instead of, hey, we're doing things backwards and we're creating regulations that are actually stifling the improvement of the vehicles, right?
So that's interesting to me, right? Like they're doing it to pad their own pockets versus your statement of they're doing it to pad their own pockets versus doing what's right for the consumer, doing it for the benefit of the consumer.
Right.
Correct?
Yeah.
So it strikes me that if we had a true market economy, it wouldn't work because there would be demand would be so low. I mean, we talked about demand early on in this podcast.
Yeah.
And I stick with the thought, the notion of like 10% drop in Gen Z wanting an electric vehicle.
Right.
The demand is going down.
Right.
It's to the electrical grid, the freezing in Chicago. This generation doesn't want it anymore.
That's right.
Wants it less. So in a true market economy, none of this stuff would fly. You can't legislate your way into building a product and selling it adequately.
Especially if it's not profitable.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
For one, they have a lack of demand. Number two, it's not that if there was an actual true cost scenario, it'd be even less demand because it'd be so expensive nobody could afford to buy them.
Yeah. Yep.
If they weren't being subsidized and there wasn't some other things going on there's no way.
Yeah, I mean,
there'd be zero demand.
Yeah, what's the MSRP of a Rivian truck?
I don't know. I bet I think they're right around $80,000 maybe. Maybe more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, 80,000.
84.
Yep.
79, 84, right?
Yeah.
2024s. So add 33,000 to that.
Yeah.
Because that's what it would actually cost.
Yeah. So would you go buy that instead of a?
And by the way, that's just breaking even.
Yeah.
Well, no. So maybe there's. Well, I don't know. I mean, if they're losing $33,000 on every sale, 33,000 added to it would be breaking even.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have a profitable company. The stock would be worth shit. However.
Yeah,
it's an electric vehicle company, so it's the belle of the ball, and
it
fits in. It checks a whole bunch of boxes.
Yeah. You know, the other thing, man, about these vehicles, and this is totally a side note, but they drive a lot differently because they're a lot heavier.
Are they?
Yeah, the batteries are heavy, man.
Yeah,
the whole floorboard's full of batteries. You know what I mean? So the whole
is it heavier than a combustion engine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Significantly.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yep. At least that's what I've seen in the stuff I've looked at, and in comparison to similar size vehicle. You know, I mean, I think you kind of compare apples to apples.
Yeah.
If you take a Toyota Camry and a Tesla base model, you know, right? I think they're significantly heavier.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Which again, man, it's just, you know, you get icy roads, you get a thing that makes a difference. It's going to drive a little different.
Yeah, sure does.
So yeah, go drive one if you want to buy one. All those great things. I think we got touched on some good points. I think there's definitely some people that are padding their pockets when it comes to the electric vehicle discussion. I think, unfortunately, those people are not the people making them.
Yeah.
Which is why they're stopping. Which is why they're halting manufacturing.
I'm really interested in this weight.
Ooh, yeah. Let's do it. Let's see the comparison. No, it's going to be really bad if I'm wrong. You're going to call me out.
No, you're right. Well, okay, so let's do, you say Camry, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of taking a guess. Do something real light so I have a chance, like Civic or something.
Yeah, they're heavier. So a Toyota Camry curb weight is 3310.
That's everything I thought, actually.
Tesla Model 3 is 3862.
It's about 500 pounds.
500 pounds.
So it's about 16% or so. Is that about right?
Yeah,
doing the math, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's not huge, I guess, but it is going to drive a little different. It'd be like having your car loaded up with crap all the time and driving it, right?
Yep.
So yeah, good discussion, man. I think this is interesting stuff. Again, I think the intentions are in some ways, you know, made to look really good. Mm-hmm. I think the intentions are not always what they are made out to seem.
This is curb weight. What does that mean?
I think it's just dry, just dry weight, I think.
Okay. So just sitting by the curb, that's what it weighs?
I would guess. Curb weight? I don't know. What does that
no
mean?
idea.
I don't know what that means.
Definition of curb weight.
That's good. Is going to go down this rabbit hole. All right. Well, very good, man. Let's wrap this thing up. I don't want to bore people. I think we're kind of getting to the end of the discussion. I think it was good. I think it's an interesting topic that is going to continue to come up. And again, obviously, these manufacturers, like we mentioned, they're halting manufacturing for a reason. There's some things not making sense in this thing that was kind of sold as the next, this is the next great thing, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, there is.
Right, it's a lot of work to do.
Long way to go. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I hope that these assholes hire some small companies and some entrepreneurs and some little guys to go out there and build these charging stations and these EV setups. And I hope it doesn't all go to the big giant companies that are already doing a lot of infrastructure projects, because that's the kind of stuff that's going to help us stimulate this shitty economy.
Agreed.
So anyway.
Curb weight is the weight of an automobile without occupants or baggage. Just FYI.
Does it include fuel?
Doesn't say.
As we go on forever. All right, man. Hey, great discussion. Thank you.
Why Not Us in all caps on Spotify. WhyNotUsPod.org is the website, and Why Not Us 1776 YouTube channel.
Love it.
Check it out.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Good man.
All right. Peace out.